If you all have questions, please put your questions in the chat box. We're also going to record this evening. So if you know of folks who wanted to make it but couldn't be with us this evening, they'll be able to view this later on. So let's go ahead and get started. So first this evening, let's start with Chairwoman Angela Turner Ford. Senator Angela Turner Ford is a graduate of Hampton University and the University of Mississippi School of Law. She is a Columbus native and a member of Delta Sigma Theta sorority. Senator Turner Ford was first elected to the state Senate in 2013. And in addition to chairing the Mississippi Legislative Black Caucus, she chairs the Senate Public Property Committee. Chairwoman, would you like to make some opening remarks?
Good afternoon. Thank you so much, Ms. Loom. And I'm certainly appreciative of your placing the call to me, inviting me to attend the call this evening, as well as to those who are going to be joining, who are listening in. I'm also thankful for my colleagues who will be making remarks later on. We're all strong proponents of public education. This is an issue that we watch from year to year. And we want to do all that we can to make sure that our teachers, our students, and parents are being served as best as possible by our education system. We have an agenda. We're trying to move our agenda, and to the extent that we cannot, those issues will just continue to be pushed year after year, regardless of who's operating or sitting in the seats that we have. So thank you, and I'm looking forward to the discussion this evening.
Terrific, thank you. Okay, next we're going to move to Leader Robert Johnson, who is the minority leader in the State House of Representatives. Representative Robert Johnson is a native of Natchez and a graduate of Washington University in St. Louis and the University of Illinois College of Law. He is a member of the Mississippi Bar Association and the Mississippi Trial Lawyers Association, and he serves as president of the Adams County Voters League. Representative Johnson first served in the Mississippi Senate from 1993 to 2003, and he was elected to the Mississippi House of Representatives in 2004. As I said before, he currently serves as the minority leader in the State House of Representatives. Leader Johnson, would you like to make some remarks?
Yes, thank you all for having me. I've been reticent about getting on one of these calls because everybody knows so much more about education than I do. But I'm here because you all are a tough audience. But my mother was at 44 years in education as a teacher, a principal, and a deputy superintendent of education. My son is just recently joined your ranks as a teacher at Vicksburg High and a football coach and a golf coach. My aunts, my uncles, everybody is in education. I don't have much room to do anything but support education. So it's been part of my agenda. It's part of what we work hard for. I can tell you that all three people on this call tonight, Chairman Turner, Senator Simmons, Chairman Simmons, we are all fighting all the time. And it boils down to, I'm just speaking for myself, but I think it applies to all of us. At the end of the day, our mission and our goal all the time is to enhance and fund requisite infrastructure in schools. That means better schools, better buildings, better equipment for teachers and students, to raise teacher pay to at least the Southeastern average. We work on that every time. I look at it this year. This year we got another proposal for a $1,000 teacher pay raise, which I think is ridiculous. We have proposed as much as a $4,000 pay raise, which is just getting us halfway to where we need to be in terms of attracting teachers and keeping teachers motivated. But we are committed to that mission, and we'll continue to do that. Our fight every year is to try to get us to MAEP and to get us above that. And it's ridiculous that we have to fight about that every year, but we literally have to. A couple of years ago, it was even challenged by some imaginary formula that was supposed to provide adequate funding for education, but when you did the numbers, you found out that they didn't. And just recently, and I voted for the tax cut bill But that is a complicated issue. It's not so much that I supported the tax cut bill, but when you're in a minority in the House of Representatives, in an effort to try to get some other things, including a bigger teacher pay raise, which is still in the offing, we're still working on it, you find yourself involved in and maybe voting for issues that as they evolve, you may have to get off that your support of it. I'm not supporting the tax cut. I'm pretty sure it'll die in the Senate, but I'm working every day to try to get the speaker and other leadership to understand and listen about our issues, about education, about healthcare, about roads and bridges, things that affect us all over the state. So we'll continue that fight. Sometimes it doesn't look quite right the way we're doing it, but we're trying to get there. But we're glad to have your support and glad to have all of the information you provide for us, because a lot of things on education, what parents are dealing with, we wouldn't know. We can't possibly know all of it. And so having the information and the research, the questions, the advocacy you provide helps us, supports us, and we're thankful for it. So thank you for having me this evening.
Thank you for being here. All right, so next we'll go to Leader Simmons. Senator Derrick Simmons is a graduate of Jackson State University, Howard University School of Business, where he earned an MBA, and Howard University School of Law. A Greenville native, he is a member of the Mississippi Bar Association, Greenville Rotary Club, Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity, and the Mississippi Technology Alliance Liaison Committee. Senator Simmons has served in the Mississippi Senate since 2011, and he currently is the minority leader of the state Senate. Leader Simmons, would you like to make some remarks?
Yes, thank you, Nancy, so much for having me, and to all of the your listeners out there and all the ones who have joined the Zoom meeting. It's an honor to be here with like-minded people who truly believe that the children that we educate today will be leading our state tomorrow. Like Chairwoman Ford said, and certainly House Leader Robert Johnson, we all agree and will continue to support education. We believe that the greater the investment in education today, the greater the return tomorrow. So we will continue to support fully funding of education from pre-K through college. We also support certainly any and all efforts to reward and retain our teachers, which will include giving them a competitive salary, and also any kind of way that we can address the critical teacher shortage. Those are things that we are concerned about and will continue to fight as we provide education in the state of Mississippi. Thank you all so much for having me.
Great, thank you. Okay, well, I'm going to start with the questions that have been submitted already. And those of you on the call, if you have questions that you would like to ask, please put them in the chat box and we will get to those as well. So the first group of questions, there were lots of questions about the teacher pay raise. Lots of people are interested in what's going to happen with the teacher pay raise. So let me read you just a couple of the questions, and then I'll toss it back to you all and let you all make some remarks about this. Teachers in our state are facing incredible obstacles that they are having to overcome daily, teaching in person and virtual, personal and family illness, students who are suffering from depression. What will you be doing this legislative session to ensure that teachers are compensated for their tremendous efforts? And excuse me, and do you expect the teacher pay raise to pass? And will we get a better pay raise next year? Teachers can hardly pay our bills. Some of us have to work 2 or 3 jobs. And why was the pay raise tacked on to the income tax cut bill? So I'll let you all answer those. Anybody who would like to?
Well, I'll jump in on the first part of the question. And I'll echo what House Leader Johnson said earlier about the teacher pay raise. We have pushed for a teacher pay raise for a number of years, as you know, Nancy. Even before the 2019 elections, we were pushing for a teacher pay raise. We wanted the pay raise to be $4,000. And like Leader Johnson said, that still only got us half the way. And there was a big fight on whether it should be 1,000 or 1,500. And so it seems as if legislative leaders and the legislative majority has been settled on that 1,000 or 1,500 that we end up settling on around the 2019 session. In the 2020 session, of course, as you all know, it was an unprecedented time for us, and we were hit by COVID. We passed a teacher pay raise bill on the Senate side, and it actually did not make it all the way through the legislative process. Likewise, the first bill that we passed on the Senate side this year, one of the first bills was certainly a teacher pay raise bill that we have transmitted over to the House. And we look forward to all of the help from Leader Johnson and all of our Republican friends on the House side to support teacher pay raise this year. As it relates to why it was actually attached to the tax cut bill, that's something I think it would be appropriate for Leader Johnson to speak to, because we haven't had a tax cut bill on our side.
And if I can kind of step in here, and certainly thank you, Senator Simmons, for those comments. As one of the first bills that was taken up in the Senate was the teacher pay raise bill. Mm-hmm. And, it was strongly supported by us. I would say the Senate as a whole. We did not have, it was a standalone bill, so there were no tax components associated with it. And even last year, we passed the teacher pay raise bill, and it just has not gained the traction that we would hope that it would receive. In terms of why it is connected to the other legislative components, such as tax cuts, the plethora of tax cuts, and I would say the effort to revamp the tax program in the state of Mississippi, I don't have the answer to that question. Certainly there are those who strategize on the best way to advance policy. I would imagine that was the reason that it was packaged the way that it was. And as Senator Simmons has mentioned, we have not taken up that bill in the Senate. There are a plethora of questions that I have, information that I feel as though I would need in order to adequately decide the issue of tax cuts, how it's to be phased out, the effect that it would have on the budget. But certainly, in light of the issues that our education professionals, our parents, our families have suffered in light of COVID, those are issues that should be placed at the forefront of all of our minds. I am a product of public education. My children are enrolled in the public schools, and I understand the issues that they are facing with, I would say, virtual access, the computers that have been doled out, and we're thankful that we were able to furnish those to so many homes. But we just need to make education a priority, and certainly to allow grace, I think, as Dr. Wright mentioned, when it comes to looking at the issues that our educators face. So in terms of the specifics of how this plan is going to be implemented, and I would say if the teacher pay raise is associated with this tax bill that is being advanced by the House, I wonder what the fate of the teacher pay raise is going to be. So I think it's important that our educators, those who are attending this call, it's time to express your wishes. Make sure that the senators who represent you know where you stand on the issue of teacher pay and COVID, and start to reach out to not only us, those who are attending this call, but all of the members of the Mississippi State Senate.
As to the tax cut bill, without belaboring this point, so when the session started, the governor advocated a doing away with the state income tax. Republicans were all around the Capitol talking about doing away with the state income tax, which was ridiculous unless you had a plan as to how you were going to balance it out. Mississippi is not a state that can stand a $1.9 billion hit to its budget. So the only thing that none of it really made any sense unless you were doing a real study and spending time looking at alternatives and which in fact, in 2008, Haley Barber appointed a commission. And I was part of that commission that did a tax study. And one of the things that came out of that commission was, whatever you do with the tax code, whatever tax cut you have, nothing should happen to diminish the amount of money you have in your budget. You should not cut your budget trying to cut taxes. And so when the speaker came out with this bill, which I didn't see until Monday, asked if I would at least keep an open mind about it. And that's all I did, looking at the bill. The two things that kept me from just dismissing it in total was that it was a complete wash as far as I could tell, and as far as the budget office, as I continue to look at the bill, would show me that there was wherever you were taking money out of the budget, they were replacing it with something. I was encouraged by the fact that for the first time ever, they raised taxes on manufacturers, corporations, and people who weren't paying what we considered a requisite amount of tax. I still didn't like the bill, but it was important in terms of going through this process as we are trying to get some of the things that we're talking about on this bill, more money for schools, more money for education. Some of that is just born out of negotiation and keeping an open mind and keeping the discussion going. That bill is not a bill. If it were ready to be signed into law now, it would be a terrible bill. The idea would be for it to evolve and continue to be worked on. That bill will probably and most likely die in the Senate, and it's probably the right thing until we have a chance to do a real study. And Mississippi is not a state that right now can afford any cuts in its budget. We don't fully fund education. We don't have expansion of Medicaid or adequate health care. Hospitals are closing. We have inadequate roads. None of those things are appropriate at this time. So that bill is just is more of a shot across the bow, I think, from one house to the governor to the Senate. And it's part of some political wrangling that is going on in the legislature. Why the teacher pay raise was put in that bill, I think that the speaker and some of the leadership in the House thought that somehow it made the tax bill more palatable, somehow that they could hold people hostage about the pay raise by including it in the tax bill. But if you listen to the press conference and heard the speaker talk, he also liked it, put it in there because when he talks about the income tax cut, he talks about not just giving teachers a $1,000 pay raise. He says, but you're going to get a $3,000 pay raise because if you make $50,000 or less, then that means that that's $2,000 in taxes that you won't have to pay. So that instead of a $1,000 pay raise, with this bill and this tax cut, we're going to be giving you a $3,000 pay raise. That's a little bit misleading. That's not what happens. Some teachers, even if they make $50,000 a year, they won't see a $2,000 savings on their income tax because they may not be paying that with dependents, with deductions and those things, but they're going to have an increase in sales tax because they're going to be spending money, and so it won't be a wash for them. It won't be a benefit for everybody. You would probably have to be somebody like my son who's single and he doesn't have any dependents, so that $2,000 may come back to him. All of that just speaks to the fact that you can't pass a sweeping tax bill in a 90-day session if you haven't had a year or two or some time to study it and look at it. So that bill will probably not go anywhere. But the only reason it's in there is because it makes the message, it inflates and embellishes the message about what you're doing. The speaker really wants to say he's giving teachers a $3,000 pay raise, and it's just not quite true. And so that all that aside, what we have before us is, I don't know if we sent the Senate a bill with an individual raise. I know we had a teacher pay raise in a standalone bill, but the Senate sent us a teacher pay raise standalone bill, Senate Bill 2001. That bill is in education now and will be taken up in the next few days. And what we hope to do is what we always do in committee and on the floor. What we like to do is amend that bill, amend it to have a higher teacher pay raise and put that before the House. And I'm gonna tell you, there are Republicans that will vote for it because there are Republicans, for instance, Republicans from Northeast Mississippi, who literally are big public school supporters. They can't afford not to support teachers. But I want to go back to something that Chair Lady Turner said. Your voice is very important. If you call your senators, no matter whether Republicans or Democrats, and let them know how you feel about this issue and how important it is, they will be inclined to support a higher raise than a $1,000 teacher pay raise. But beyond that, in the next 2 to 3 years, I hope you all continue to understand that it's so important to elect people who are going to be loyal and committed to your interest. We have a supermajority of Republicans in the House of Representatives. We have to involve ourselves in all these political maneuverings in an effort to try to get some things done because we're dealing with people who literally are not as supportive of education as we would like to see them be. So I have to work with the speaker. I have to work with the chairman of appropriations. I have to figure out how to ease in issues like teacher pay raise and more money for broadband, those kind of things, because I'm not in the majority. I don't appoint committees. I don't say where money is spent. So I have to continue. We all have to continue to work with the people we are that we're serving with now, and that leads to us taking a little bit more time, a little bit more effort. But it helps if you all make those calls and put that pressure on. So that's where we are. I hope that explained why we had that teacher pay raise in the tax bill. It is inappropriately in the tax bill. It's an appropriation issue, and it's in a Ways and Means bill. So it doesn't make sense for it to be in the tax bill. So you will have a standalone teacher pay raise bill.
Thank you for those insights. That's really helpful. Let's move to MAEP. That is a topic of great concern to our members. And I'm just going to I think you all know all the problems that we have with being underfunded. Our neighboring states outspend Mississippi by an average of $1,200 per student. It's the moral thing to do. It's good for our state. So here are the questions. How can we effectively convince our legislature and statewide leaders to significantly increase our investment in K-12 education? And there is a question about ADA this year with the pandemic, with attendance being so low, and their hold harmless bills working their way through the process. So there's a question about that. Will you, in fact, hold school districts harmless for attendance this year, because that's how schools are funded? And do you expect MAEP funding to be increased this year? It's important to remember that level MAEP funding actually means a cut when considering the teacher salary step increases and PERS contribution increases and health insurance and that sort of thing. So those are our MAEP questions. Who would like to start?
I can start if I may. Angela Turner Ford here. As chair of the Mississippi Legislative Black Caucus, I have to say that we have an agenda that we started out with at the beginning of the legislative session. And one of our agenda items was that MAEP would be fully funded. And that is not a position that we're just now taking in 2021. For numerous years, MAEP has not been funded as it should. We will just continue to pound the pavement on that point. And one thing that I would like to add is another agenda item is that we want our teachers to be compensated up to the level of the Southeastern average. And to the extent that we're not doing that now, why not devise a plan to do so? So all of these, I believe that all of this is a matter of political will. It's a matter of how we will prioritize the interest of our students, the interest of teachers. And it goes without saying that we have underinvested in education. And that's just something that we have to bring to the forefront. I would say as a Democrat, as a Black member of the legislature, as the chair of the Mississippi Legislative Black Caucus, that's just our position, and it's not going to change. So I'm not sure how we can impress upon our colleagues that that's a priority, other than those individuals who are on this call, those members who are of your network. We have to continue to say that this is what we want, and this has to be a priority for us. And that's the only way that it's going to change. We have to just continue to advance it as an issue.
And Nancy, I'll jump in after Chairwoman Turner Ford. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. And so certainly, yeah, we all have always supported full funding of MAEP. We will continue to do that. To the second part of the question regarding the whole harmless provision, in addition to that teacher pay raise that we passed, which was Senate Bill 2001, Senate Bill 2149 was the whole harmless bill that the Senate did in fact take up. And if I can recall, I would say I think the vote was almost unanimously, just like the teacher pay raise bill. So those two bills were two of the first actions, if you will, regarding education that we took up in the Senate, and those bills are in the House. Now, there is a deadline for Senate bills to be passed out of House committee, and that deadline is next Tuesday. And so I would encourage all of the supporters of public education, the supporters of our teachers and our students and education as a whole in the state of Mississippi to call their representatives on the whole harmless bill, as well as the standalone teacher pay raise bill, to encourage that those bills are passed out of committee. Because if they are not passed out of committee, then of course they would die by that committee, by Tuesday's deadline. And so I know earlier question was about the teacher pay raise bill being attached to the tax cut bill. Well, the two bills that I just mentioned, they are standalone bills for education, and those bills do need to pass out of those House committees onto the House floor by the Tuesday deadline. And so, yes, we will continue to fight for full funding of MAEP, and certainly in light of what we have dealt with regarding COVID, we certainly want to hold our district harmless regarding ADA, not only last year, but also this year, if we could consider something in the upcoming session. And I don't know if you have a waiver issue, and that may come out when you start talking about reciprocity, but I'll talk about that too, but we'll talk about that later.
Well, I can just tell you that generally, I mean, if you notice the thread of these questions and discussion all come back to money. And my two colleagues are probably have technically, in terms of following the bills, probably know a little bit more about what bills have been introduced. But I can look, the bottom line is, the only reason I'm such an advocate and so strong about MAEP, because I believe if you put more money into schools and put more money in that program, we get better schools, we get better outcomes. The only reason I support teacher pay raises and paying teachers more money, because as I'm a lawyer, if you pay me well, I'll work well. If you pay teachers well, you get a better product. We attract more people into the profession. All of those things lead to helping students, helping schools do a better job. But again, one of the things that I see in my district, or when I travel around the state, nobody ever talks about the condition of these schools, or talk about the fact that technology-wise, a lot of our schools are way behind in terms of training. All those things lead to the kind of issues that help kids do better when they get out of the system. And I don't think we're doing as much as we need to do there. But again, that even comes back to money. And there's nobody in state administration, there are no experts that say, oh, you're spending more than enough money on education. Nobody feels that way. And so we'll continue to push and be advocates to put the requisite amount of money into education and pay teachers in a manner that we think they should be compensated what they're worth. But just generally, I mean, that mission hadn't stopped for us. Two things: raise teacher pay, fully fund MAEP, simply because it helps students get a better product.
Thank you. Terrific. Okay, and someone had asked the bill numbers for that Leader Simmons was referring to, and so I'm going to give you the pay raise, the teacher pay raise bill numbers. The Senate bill is 2001. Senate Bill 2001 is their pay raise. The House pay raise bill is House Bill 852. And then the ADA hold harmless bill is Senate Bill 2149. I think those are the ones that Senator Simmons was mentioning. Okay, let's go to pre-K. What is your position on expansion of pre-K? Do you think we will get a 4-year-olds program statewide during this term? And what about pre-K for 3-year-olds? And how will the proposed tax cut bill affect expansion of pre-K? So what about pre-K?
Who starts this one? I guess I can go first. I think considering the issues that we are having with the $1,000 teacher pay raise, expansion of pre-K at this point is, I would say, I have not heard it discussed. And I just believe in speaking in terms of realities. I do not see that being a reality this session. Certainly it is a priority for many, but I just don't see how that issue will gain traction before we dismiss or adjourn sine die this year. I would say that if we do want to see it advanced, we're going to have, that's one of those issues that probably can be propelled during the off season. Certainly reach out, that could be a source of that could be the subject of a hearing, but I just don't see that being advanced with the issues that we currently face. And I would just have to add that during a conversation, probably maybe 7 months ago, regarding the issue of the expansion of the pre-K program, I heard some discussions that were, I would say, somewhat perplexing to me. But when we start talking about the expansion of services in the public education program, there are some people who feel as though they're doing their share, and they don't necessarily want to contribute anymore to expand that type of program. So I think that we have to work on the mindset of how people are perceiving public education and how we perceive our responsibilities as it relates to investing in the education of our children. But to specifically answer the question, I just don't see a lot of traction on the expansion of pre-K at this point.
Well, Senator Bryce Wiggins introduced a bill last year that made it out of the Senate, made it to the House, and died in House committee that would have expanded pre-K. But it's just, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, it's perplexing, as the chair lady said. I heard discussions. There were people, I think, on one of the blogs or somebody was Y'all Politics or somewhere. They actually said we don't really need to expand pre-K because all the studies show that the best thing you can do for a 4 or 5-year-old is let them play. I mean, that's what we're dealing with. So we are fighting, tooth and nail to get them to fully fund MAEP. And so expansion of pre-K is probably a little bit beyond happening right now, but it's certainly every study in the country, everywhere they've applied it, it shows that the earlier you start teaching kids, pre-K leads to better students, better outcomes later on. And it's just, but again, we got people to believe that a 4 or 5-year-old, the best thing to do for them is let them play. I mean, they literally foster that as a philosophy. And so that's what we're dealing with. We'll keep the fight up, but I don't see it happening this year.
Yep. Please know that we fully support expansion of pre-K, despite what happens in the legislature, and we will continue to fight for it.
Excellent. Thank you. So we have a couple of questions about mental health and mental health in public schools. So one question is, what is your thought toward increasing health and mental health services in the school system? And another question is, with so many adverse circumstances faced by students now and schools drastically short-staffed when it comes to counselors, what priorities does the Legislative Black Caucus have for supporting mental health services in schools?
I would say that that's an issue that we know we have to pay close attention to. That's not currently one of our agenda items, but when you talk about anxiety, and especially when you frame that in the context of COVID, schools are operating now with the virtual schedules, and some of them have hybrid schedules. And at some point, we're going to have to transition back to the classroom. And I would imagine that what would come along with that would be just the anxiety of being in close proximity to, groups of people in a small space. And I think that, the COVID pandemic has highlighted a lot of issues that have just not received the attention that they should in the past. And I would imagine, I know that mental health is it's being brought to the forefront. So I would say that as we move through the session, we pay closer attention to it. as we go through the off season. That's just one of those issues that we're going to have to address, because it's going to affect the mental acuity, I believe, of our teachers, of our students, and we want our parents to be comfortable sending their students to the classroom. So that's an issue that's moving closer to the forefront, I would say.
Okay. Anybody else on that?
Just that we don't adequately fund any of our mental health services here in the state at all. The state hospital is underfunded. Regional mental health centers are underfunded. We just don't. I mean, so before you ever get to schools, we're releasing people on the street who need help that should be institutionalized. And if we're not doing that, we're locking them up in prison, which is inappropriate for people who need that kind of help. So yeah, I mean, clearly we need more counselors in school. We need more mental health services for students. All that is true. But again, we don't fully fund MAEP. We don't pay our teachers an adequate pay raise. We're not going to take care of mental health before we take care of any of those services. So I'm just saying we have big issues, which all can get solved with money, but you got to have the political inclination to want to do something about it. And the leadership that we have there now just doesn't show that inclination. And the best thing you can do is in the next 2 to 3 years, help us marshaling the efforts to change who you elect to send up to the legislature. I hate to say this, but there's so many people who are parents, who have kids in public schools, teachers who teach in public schools, and they elect people who vote against their interests. They literally go out and vote for people who do not support the interests that we're talking about right here. We need to change that. Don't elect people who are not going to support your kids or support what you're interested in, under some idea that, well, I'm a conservative, or I don't vote for anybody who's going to support abortion. State elected officials have nothing to do with abortion, nothing. Ask them if they support public education. Ask them if they support teacher pay raises. Ask them if they support broadband in schools or mandatory school for 5-year-olds. Ask them if they support the things that will improve educational outcomes. And if they start and stop being a person that supports public schools and supports teachers and voting for a person about whether or not they support the Second Amendment or whether or not they support or whether or not they're pro-life. That's a federal issue. Let them handle that. Vote for your kids. Vote for your neighbors who teach school. Do that, and you won't have this discussion we're having now. It would be a whole lot more encouraging if we weren't outnumbered in the House 2-1.
And I'll just conclude by saying, not only focus on who you sent to the state legislature, also focus who you send or who you vote for all your statewide offices as well, please, because we are talking about fully funding MAEP. We are talking about adequately paying teachers. We are talking about expanding pre-K. We are talking about whether or not we should fully fund mental health. We are talking about our deficient roads and bridges. We are talking about hospitals closing. How can you talk about all of those things that we're so deficient? The state's income, this third of the state's budget. So please, as educators, as supporters of educators, do the right thing in 2023 when you go to the polls.
And let me follow that up, because this question that we got is about equity, but it's very similar to what you were just addressing. And it says, what can be done legislatively to address the disparity in racial access to education, healthcare, and the judicial process?
I tell you what, elect more people like me, and they'll take care of it. They'll do it right.
Yeah, elect more people like our illustrious chairwoman, Angela Turner.
There you go.
I'm the last one to speak. A lot of this is just based on, people. Some of this is based on where people live, and where we live. I think to some extent that that's that's who we're sending to the legislature. But I would say as a personal, I guess my personal charge is to try to look beyond the immediate impact that legislation has on me as an individual. I am looking at the collective.
Yeah.
And you have to, everything that we do now, and maybe not everything, but the majority of what we do in the Senate is being broadcast online. And so, you can go to www.legislature.ms.gov, and that is the website where you can click on webcast. So a lot of what we do on the floor is being broadcast online. What we do in committee is being recorded or transmitted on YouTube. If you want to see how we are deliberating and debating bills, all of this is readily accessible to you. But in addition to that, when you hear these bill numbers, you can pull up these documents and you can see how your senator and your representative voted on a particular issue. It's not anything that's concealed or closed off to the public. And so if you feel as though the policies that are being advanced do not comply with what you believe we should be doing as a legislature, there's a way for you to check that and not just listen to the stump speech or maybe what you hear at campaign time. And so it's not so much about, I understand that this question is about disparity and racial access as it relates to education, but the only way that you're going to know if it's, I guess, a racial implication, or if a group is suffering disparities in how legislation is being passed and how we as legislators vote on it, is to check and see. And that's something that you can do in your spare time. And I just try, that's a message that I try to convey when I have an opportunity. We have to become more engaged as citizens in the state of Mississippi if you want to see change. Now, if you're satisfied and comfortable with the policies that are coming out of the Capitol, then by all means leave things as they are. But it's difficult to expect a group that's operating in the minority to cast a vision and effectuate policy that you want to see, and we simply don't have the numbers to do it. And we just need the help of the community, I would say, at this point.
Again, if you want more access, if you're a woman, if you're an African American, if you are a person of color, if you want more diversity, stop electing people who shut down access to diversity. I mean, you literally got people. There are people who run the Senate and the House and the governor's office who don't believe we have a access issue. They believe we're diverse enough. There's enough balance. Quit electing people who believe everything is okay. Status quo is fine. Education is okay. There's no reason there's a reason why you are asking a question. There's a reason why these problems exist. You keep electing people. We've been introduced to a bill. Women make 60% of what a man makes in the state of Mississippi. We have women who are elected who vote against an equal pay for women. That makes no sense to me. But you keep electing people who not only vote against your interests, they vote against their own interests. And so I appreciate what the chair lady is saying. You can watch, you can listen, you can talk to people in your community, you can go back. But if you don't get these people out of office and change who your leadership is, you're going to continue to have the same problems. And look, fully funding MAEP, paying teachers the Southeastern average. You know what all that means? That means that we got $800 million in tax exemptions that huge corporations, manufacturers, people in this state who are getting rich, taking that money and walking out of here, have exemptions, money that we're leaving on the table, that we're protecting, and you elect people who protect them, and they won't take that money. So when they tell you, well, we don't have enough money for MAEP, creating jobs, we have one of the highest unemployment rates in the country. But they're supposed to be doing such a fantastic job by giving all these tax breaks to all these corporations that are not supporting the infrastructure here in the state. No, if you want to see, if you want women to be treated better, you want African American people of color to be treated better, if you want your kids to have equal access or schools, HBCUs, or all schools, not just the big three, to have the kind of funding and the kind of backing that they need, elect people who are going to listen to you. Again, the best example I have is there are women who vote against equal pay for women. I don't understand that. But you keep electing them. If you keep electing them, that's the result you're going to get. So I'm out here. I'm telling you, we're going to have legislative redistricting sometime this year or early next year. We're going to probably end up having to sue the legislature and the state to try to get districts that are not gerrymandered in a way that creates this unbalance that we have. We need your support on that. If you all these things you're concerned about, if you want to see that kind of change, support moving these people out who vote against your interests and vote against their own interests.
Thank you. All right, let's talk about, there are a couple of questions about school choice. One is about vouchers and the other is about charter schools. So I'll go ahead and, well, maybe I'll separate those. We'll just ask them one right after the other. So the one about vouchers says, I'm so glad that the legislature added some accountability to that ESA voucher program last session. Giving publicly funded vouchers to children with special needs so they can attend private schools with no special education programs is ridiculous. The same people who pushed for that voucher program want private school vouchers for all children. What is your view on expanding vouchers?
I am adamantly opposed to expanding vouchers. I believe public schools. I am so glad that in the Senate, we put some more accountability measures in place regarding the ESA program. It is my hope that we can completely eliminate the program. One of the reasons why we are having a problem with fully funding our traditional schools is because we are siphoning public dollars away from our traditional public schools into these ESA programs, into charter schools. So I am one legislator who is on record publicly stating I am adamantly opposed to both.
I'm against vouchers. I'm against charter schools because they erode the funding that we need for public schools. Again, I vote against them every time because that's in my best interest. It's in the best interest of the people I represent. And so if I did otherwise, then they would vote me out. So I'm a representative. The people I represent say, we don't want vouchers. We don't want charter schools. We want you to put more money in our public school system. And so I'm against vouchers, let alone expansion. And so, and the experts in education, the experts in our state education office tell us these things are not good. But if you got to have them, let's try to put some controls in place. But if it was just purely my opinion, let's get rid of them. We don't need, a strong, fully funded public school system, no vouchers. All these kids with special needs could be taken care of in our public school system if you gave them the money. Somebody talked about mental health services. We could have all the services we need for special needs, all those things, if we would put money in our public school system. They wouldn't have to go to a private school.
I agree. And I would just echo that by saying, even when the voucher program was implemented by the legislature, as well as charter schools, I voted against both of those pieces of legislation. And the main reason is that I don't see how it does not seem fair to me or equitable to me to fund other programs and we have not adequately supported and funded our public schools. That should be the priority. And I just have to stand on that. And I am glad that accountability more measures have been put in place regarding the ESAs. I think the peer report indicated that program has just been an abysmal failure as it was implemented previously. So we know that there are problems. I don't think anyone on this call has supported them in any capacity at any point. And I don't think that that's going to change anytime soon.
Okay. So the next question about school choice is about charter schools. And it says, charter schools are allowed to locate in school districts that have a D or F rating without the local school board's approval. But we didn't get new school ratings last year, and some districts believe their ratings would have improved. Will charter schools be allowed to open new schools in school districts that are rated D or F under ratings from 2 years ago? Allowing new charter schools to locate in our districts due to outdated ratings seems unfair.
Well, I can't answer that question, but I tell you, I'll get back to Ms. Loom when I call some of my friends at the State Department of Education and ask them, because that's who I would ask. But if the law says that that's how we're doing it, I would, even though they didn't get the ratings, if that's what the law is, I'm unless we change the law, they're still going to be able to do that. But I'll check on
that. I echo that. I think that there's a charter school authorizing board that's in place, and new charters would have to be approved by that board. And I have not heard of any changes or moratoriums even for that matter. So I do think that it's worth us checking into to communicate this question as a concern of our constituents.
Right. I do think that it's the charter school board, not the State Board of Education, that would make that decision. And I agree that legislation would probably be required to force their hand on that issue. Let's see. We had another question in the chat box. Let me see. This says, I do not always agree with the state auditor, but I do agree with his statement in 2019 that school districts largely do not spend their funds appropriately. Do you feel districts need to provide a more detailed fiscal report to document spending?
No. Until we give school districts the requisite amount of money that they need, you want to put more controls and more requirements on people who are having to find creative ways to fund programs, to fund curriculum, to do things. They got enough to do already. I mean, there may be a problem, but there's not a rampant problem. The biggest problem they have is they don't have enough money. So no, I'm not for doing that. And he has enough to do.
He does, and I agree with you, Representative Johnson. That's just our teachers are under enough stress, and I don't think that that's a path that on which we need to send the state auditor. Just let's recover from COVID and let's fund the schools the way that we're supposed to. They need resources, and I'm just not aware of any huge cases of misspending or mishandling funds. We need to put first priorities first, and that's to get our teachers in a position where they can be compensated, our students feel comfortable, that they can be educated in a healthy setting. And right now, that's an issue that we have not addressed. We don't know how our students are going to transition back to school, and that needs to be our focus at this point.
And I certainly agree with the other two leaders on the call. I mean, our schools are already under attack for woefully being underfunded. And so we certainly don't need them to be under attack from this state auditor. So I certainly would answer the question no as well.
Okay, here's a question. The bill to ban transgender males to females from participating in sports teams demeans both females and those transitioning to female. It is a highly offensive political ploy and should not pass. Do you believe this bill will become law?
Well, if it does, we're going to spend millions of dollars fighting a lawsuit that we're going to lose again. So I hope it doesn't. I hope somebody in the Senate has the wisdom to help kill our bill. And I think we have something coming from the Senate that we figure out a way to not pass that one as well. Now, I think as conservative as our leadership may be, I think they understand that this is a red herring that could cost us a lot of money. It's unnecessary. It's not a problem, and it's discriminatory. It is highly offensive, and so we need to just be prepared to do as much as we can to fight it. But at the end of the day, even if it becomes law, it won't stay law. It's going to, somebody's going to sue and it's going to get struck down.
Yeah, that seems to be legislation in search of a problem, and that's I really don't have a whole lot to say about it. And I'm not laughing because it's trivial. I just, that's a bill that passed the floor on the Senate, and Leader Simmons can correct me. What was it? Maybe 13 of us that voted against it. And so it was I would say an overwhelming majority of the Senate that voted in support of it, but I certainly have huge problems with it. And, hopefully cooler heads will prevail and someone can bring both of those bills to a cease, and hopefully to a stop, and hopefully that can come from leadership, I would hope.
Well, certainly in light of all the problems that we have highlighted on this call regarding public schools and all the other problems that we are dealing with in the state regarding so many other vital functions of government that are being underfunded, we don't need to spend taxpayer dollars defending a lawsuit that is, we know at the point that we vote for it, is completely discriminatory. All students, in my opinion, deserve to be developed and to learn through sports, and we should not discriminate on who those students are.
Okay, one last question that is sort of related to education, because it gets to what you all have been saying about who we elect and that sort of thing. And so this will be our last question, and then I'll let you all make any closing remarks you would like to make. The question is, purging the voter rolls discourages voting. What is preventing us from monitoring the current situation, and why is this needed?
That's another piece of legislation that I believe we're going to spend a lot of taxpayer dollars trying to defend. We have a fundamental, sacred constitutional right to vote, and we also have a sacred constitutional right not to vote. I don't think it's our place or anyone's place to tell voters when and how frequent they should vote. And that is exactly what the bills that are making their way through the House and the Senate would do. And so, of course, the people on this call, we certainly oppose those bills. We will continue to fight those bills legislatively, and if they pass the legislature and become law, they certainly will be fought in the courts.
All right. Well, I said that was the last question. As you're making your closing remarks, I have a question for you that I'd like for you to address, if you could. And that is that we have heard that there will be another effort to rewrite the MAEP formula, the school funding formula, and that is likely to begin, that they will have hearings, and that is likely to begin at the close of this legislative session. Have you all heard anything about that? And if so, what should we expect? And then please make any other remarks that you would like to make.
I'll start, if I may, by saying I have not heard that. It's my understanding that there are plans to have hearings, certainly on the issue of teacher pay during the off season. So it doesn't sound like a far-fetched notion that would be part of the discussion. I think the most important thing that we can do, we saw what happened when that issue was before both sides of the House. I think it was I cannot remember the group that provided the report. It just escapes me. Yes, Ed Bill, how can I forget? When they presented, and that was just an issue that seemed to have a lot of traction around the Capitol. But I'm glad that it was not advanced. But the best thing that the best strategy that I believe that we can employ is to be offensive about it, to try to get ahead of it before it happens. We know how those types of policies, where they can lead to. We know this organization knows what its priorities are. Teachers, parents, and those legislators who are aligned with you, we need to start becoming energized and trying to get out ahead of it. So, do you want us to close now, or you want us to kind of go around and respond to that particular issue? Whatever is easiest. I'll let the others respond before going off on a tangent.
I haven't heard anything. I wouldn't be surprised. The problem with MAEP is that it is a objective formula. You can't say that you fully fund education if you're not doing MAEP. What they want is a formula to say we funded education. If they don't put but $1 in it, they say that's the dollar we put in it. That's what they want. They want a formula that they can proselytize and brag on that really doesn't do what it's supposed to do. And so that's why they need it, because MAEP doesn't allow you to do that. It doesn't allow you to say, I fully fund education, because the formula is what it is. It's objective. You can't get around it. And so that's what they did. They just need a way for a different message, because politically, it is beginning to be a problem, even for Republicans, to continue to tell people who live in their districts that we're doing all we can for public education, when people beginning to know that they're not. And so I wouldn't be surprised if there's another effort to do that. But the last effort was the cover was pulled off it. It was exposed for what it was. So maybe they have revamped and figured out a different way to do it. But no, I haven't heard that. But I'll close by saying, again, I don't know what else I can say. I've rambled on enough tonight, except to say, let's try to, let's try to elect people. Let's try to work from here on out to try to pressure the people you've elected to do the things you need them to do. And some of you on this call are represented by people who are voting against all the things that you talk about, all the things you want to see happen. And so let's pressure them to do better. And if they don't do better, hold them accountable and change your leadership, change the makeup of the House of Representatives and the Senate, and we'll start getting results. I'm elected. I've been able to stay elected because when I don't do what people ask me to do, there's some pressure that is brought to bear. You can do the same thing. But that's what I'd like to see happen. I think public education is the greatest institution we have in the state. It's one that we need to do more to support, and we're going to continue to do that. That's part of who we are. It's part of our mission, and we'll continue to fight for you. But we need as much information and much research, as much support as you give us. We appreciate it. We appreciate the newsletters. We appreciate all the information you send. We want to continue to do that. So thank you.
And Nancy, I'll jump in now and just say thank you so much for your leadership. Thank you so much for all of the support you actually give us to do the work that we are doing in the legislature. We know that the Parents Campaign and all of the supporters of education are our friends when we are here doing the intractable work that we are sent down here to do. The children we educate today will be leading the state tomorrow. I started with that, I'll say it again. The higher the investment in education, the greater the return we will see tomorrow. It's so important that you elect people who believe in those things, and we will start to see an expansion of pre-K. We will start seeing more funding going towards MAEP. We will start seeing a lot of these dollars that is being siphoned away, public dollars to ESA programs and charter school programs, returning back to their rightful place, which is traditional public schools. But it's up to you to send people to this Capitol that will do the things that you care about and that we care about, which is public education. Thank you all so much for having me tonight, and I look forward to joining you sometime soon.
Thank you. Other closing remarks?
I'd just like to close by saying thank you all for the opportunity to join the call this evening. And I understand that the Parents Campaign is a nonpartisan group, and it is also racially diverse. And that there are also legislators who are, I would say, have a comprehensive and an outlook on education that is to promote, that will promote the common good. And so we know that this is not an issue that is Democrat, it's not Republican, it's not Black, it's not white, but public education is important to all of us. And I certainly appreciate the work that the Parents Campaign is doing. I look at the newsletters and it just kind of helps keep me up to speed on what is going on, especially in the House, as I'm a member of the Senate. It's important that you all stay engaged with us as we move throughout the Capitol conducting the people's work. And I think as long as we are aware of the issues that are important to the Parents Campaign, to our teachers, and to the families across the state of Mississippi, that's going to help us be in a position to respond, whether it's by points of advocacy or raising questions. As these bills move through the process, this arms us with the information that we need to be most effective. So continue the work that you're doing, continue to reach out to us as a resource. And I want you all to know that public education is important to me. And all students, we don't want any of our students to be behind or treated unfairly just because of a public school that they're attending. All of these schools need to function in a way that is fair to all of our children. And I think that that's the sentiment of everyone that is on this call. So thank you for your time tonight. And I look forward to speaking with you in the future.
I'm just glad I survived the call. After I saw those questions that Nancy sent me, I was scared to death. So she made them, they weren't as bad after she asked them, but I'm like, what? Who are these people? You know, I gotta do some more reading. Yeah, I gotta bone up a little bit. I was about to go call Pete Smith, who's a good friend of mine, and say, look, man, answer these questions for me. But thank y'all for having me. I'm glad I survived.
Thank you for joining us, and to everyone on the call, thank you so much for being with us, for your wonderful questions. And also, they all mentioned, all of our speakers this evening mentioned holding legislators accountable. You can check their education votes on our website, and we've put our website link in the chat box. So go there. You can look if you don't know who your own legislators are, you can find them by school district. So you can see all the legislators who represent your school district, and we have a link to their education voting records, their votes, the way they vote on the bills that we take positions on. You can also keep up with how these bills are moving through the process and who votes how on those bills on the bill tracker on our website. So use our resources and let's hold all legislators accountable for their votes. That's democracy, and it's a wonderful thing that we can do for our communities, and especially for our children. Next week, we will have joining us Senator Nicole Boyd and Representative Clay DeWeese, who will be with us to talk about their dyslexia legislation. So I look forward to getting your questions about that, and you can ask them any education related question, that's fine, but they'll be here really to talk about their dyslexia bills. If you registered for this session, you are registered for all three of them, so you're good to go. So thanks again. Have a lovely evening, and I'll look forward to seeing you hopefully next week at 5:30 as well. Thank you so much to our speakers. You were wonderful. I've gotten so much feedback that this was a terrific session. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And I hope you'll join us again. We'll invite you back.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.